Welcome back, loyal fight fans, to boxing. Eat that shit up. I am your humble host, Tummy Tom O'Neill, the human body snatcher, the cash grabber, the baby mama stabber. And if this thing would stop shaking for me, we could quit this jibber jabber. You know the drill, fight fans. Hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button, and if you know a friend, a family member who enjoys combat sports, definitely they'd probably enjoy watching this. You got a crazy ex who's absolutely ruining your life, a worst enemy. They need to subscribe to Unboxing, understand? So let's jump into a recap from last Saturday. DAZN recap, ESPN Top Rank recap. So we'll start with the DAZN side. I was wrong. I'm here to tell you. Congratulations, Kid Galahad takes a win for the second time over Jazza Dickens, and they stopped it before the last round. It was a good stoppage. Kid Galahad was very dominant in this performance. I was wrong. There was some things I was right about. I thought the general game plan, and I'm not, talking outside of my zone here. I just put together very simple things to start a game plan. It's a basic game plan, and then you add things to it. I think that's what Jazza Dickens' coaches wanted. That's what he came out and was doing in the first round. And although it was harder for him to go to the body, and he was paying for it, he was doing that in the first round. I did give him the first round because, as I said, Kid Galahad's very crafty, obviously, with his offense. I gave him full credit, but he's not an incredibly hard hitter. However, in this fight, he was sitting down on his punches more. That still doesn't make him a knockout artist, that he's going to be stopping people left and right. But over time, the accumulation of damage in this fight, because he was so dominant, he did try to sit down in his punches as much as he could. And he also just put on such a pace. I didn't anticipate him putting on such a pace like that. Is absolutely incredible. So he takes the win for the second time over Jazza Dickens. And then in the ESPN Top Rank recap, we have Michael Conlan, good old Mick Conlan, taking one home in his hometown of Belfast for Ireland. And as Michael Conlan always says, he fights for all of Ireland, which I appreciate, especially because he's from Northern Ireland. He's very much just makes it very clear, I only want pride for being an Irish fighter, whatever kind of Irish you are. And that's very appreciated. Hell of a fighter. We did call that win, and he had a dominant performance. He was even surprised. He's another guy who's not, I love him, but there you go. Michael Conlan's another guy who's not a hard hitter. But he was even able to drop his opponent, TJ Doheny. He was able to drop him and just dominate by far most of those rounds, even outside of that round when he dropped him. It was a good fight, and Belfast was sure, the crowd was very lively. We have the Irish boxing gloves right here to celebrate for good old Mick Conlan, and that's a great win. As far as his next couple fights, man, so they're putting out there that, the winner of Figueroa and Stephen Fulton Jr., that he might get the winner of that. Now, I like Michael Conlan a lot, but I'm very honest. I think that I don't like him fighting either of those guys right now. And that's not to say that he couldn't win. That is not to say he couldn't win. It would not at all surprise me. But 100% win or lose, those are very risky fights, right? Now, the other, he's got a lot of options in that weight class, and with this great win and holding a title himself, he's got a lot of options in this weight class filled with great names. Personally, for me, I want him to fight Leigh Wood, who upset Zucan, who we talked about on the last episode. Now, he's got a belt from that, Leigh Wood. Now, Leigh Wood's been beat in the past. Leigh Wood's been beat by Jazza Dickens. Both Jazza Dickens, Leigh Wood had a great performance. He certainly elevated himself in that great performance over Zucan. It was an incredible underdog win for sure. But just stylistically, that's another guy who's got a belt right there. And I do feel confident that Michael Conlan would school Leigh Wood. I'm going to make that call right now. So personally, that's the fight I want to see him take next. because, you know, Stephen Fulton Jr. And Figueroa, very good box. If anything, you know, the defense of Stephen Fulton Jr. is great. So he would, you know, Michael Conlan or a lot of fighters would have problems with constantly connecting or being able to be nearly as dominant as he was in this last fight against a Stephen Fulton Jr. Figueroa to some extent as well, but Figueroa is kind of a comfort, you know, Figueroa can crack a bit. You know, but either of these guys, it's like for different reasons, I just don't love him taking that matchup as a fan right now because it's very risky. But I honestly think Lee would, and he's coming off that great win, so he's built his name into where you can make this fight. Michael Conlan's got a great win, and that's another belt he can grab because I do feel Michael Conlan just takes that quite easily. That's the one to take, and then you're having more ring time, all the more ring time and experience that you can have before you're taking the toughest challenges in the division are you know, always good. And then there's even tougher challenges, honestly, than Stephen Fulton Jr. or Figueroa in that weight class. But yeah, so that's the recap right there. And let's jump into this weekend because Friday and Saturday we have boxing. Now, we have a lot of boxing, okay? The UFC actually not putting on events this weekend. There is some MMA, but they're in the PFL, Bellator. Comparatively to the UFC, don't at all move the needle, right? When you compare them to that. So it's kind of good sometimes, and we love the UFC here, but sometimes it's kind of good to have these weekends where it's not only just boxing without these, so you get more eyeballs, but boxing like this where you get all four major promotions, you know, putting on events, and just a ton of an overload of boxing. It's really great, and there is some great fights. So on DAZN, I mean, first off, I should mention there's about 3 other title fights besides the ones that I'm even going to touch on here. But on DAZN, you have Virgil Ortiz taking on Kavaliauskas, the Meme Machine. The Meme Machine, obviously, the only man to have ever hurt Crawford. I don't care what anybody says. He absolutely, I mean, not to mention that that's the popular opinion that I hold, but he absolutely hurt Crawford. Now, Crawford, to his credit, just polished him off. He didn't have to take much time before coming back after that to finish him off. But nonetheless, you know, Meme Machine can definitely crack. That's a guy that can hit hard. That's a guy who's going to try to push the pace, and he's kind of a win or lose warrior, go out on his shield kind of a fighter. Which is a very good test for Virgil Ortiz. Now, I am going to pick Virgil Ortiz over Kavaliauskas, the Meme Machine, because I think Virgil Ortiz has a really bright future, man. And I mean, he's a heavy favorite. There's a reason for that. But that being said, this is by far, I mean, you know, when Ortiz last fought and beat Hooker, that was a great win, and that was a perfectly timed. I like the way they're moving Virgil Ortiz here, Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy Promotions, because that was a great win, but it was like before that there wasn't much. Now he's got that. Now they're going Meme Machine. They know he hurt Crawford, right? This is all guys in the same division. Like, let's see him get that. He's a warrior kind of a fighter, Kavaliauskas, you know, so let's see him kind of get that. They're kind of moving him very well. And that's saying a lot, because I don't agree with a lot that Oscar De La Hoya does and says these days. But I do like the way that they're promoting him and moving him. I think this is an appropriate fight where it is, again, not a step back. They are all steps up, but you're not going too fast, right? With a young fighter who, I promise you, there might be very well, I'm open to the idea that one day, you know, Virgil Ortiz, and it probably won't ever happen actually, but you don't know in boxing, but that one day Virgil Ortiz could be at the very least, highly competitive against a Crawford or a Spence. But right now, if he fights a Crawford, a Spence, even probably a Porter, I'm thinking he gets exposed big time simply because he has so much potential, man, but he's young, and this is the way you build a fighter. I like it. I like where they're going with this. Then we're going to touch on the ESPN Top Rank. Now, if you've been watching boxing, right, for a little bit now, you'll notice that over a year ago, in the very first starting of boxing, we talked about a fight with Joshua Franco and Andrew Maloney, right? And we were very upset with this. I rant and raved nonstop about this. They had just, I believe it's Nevada, had just, put into effect their instant replay for the first time. And the judges can go back and change the initial call. I was so excited. The initial call that might be, there's a lot of times a bad call by the referee. If it's controversial, they can now, like the NFL, like anything else, go back and use an instant replay, almost like a challenge would be, right? And change the call if it wasn't right. They just, instituted this around the time of this fight. That might have been the very first time they used it. And man, this great fight, Andrew Maloney's dominating for 2 rounds. There's no headbutt. They use the instant replay, and thank God it's like, okay, here we go. Let's see how this is. First off, it takes way too long. Why is it taking 30 minutes of constant instant replay? The announcers are running out of things to say about it, okay? Because there's nothing to see. There's no headbutt at all. Their head's barely grazed. It doesn't even look like when they're like grazed. That's not a headbutt. And second, it doesn't even look like the grazing nearly connects at all. Not to mention, man, that then they show separate replays, right? When they're like, that's not a headbutt, that they're So here comes the replay where we can clearly see, in the moment, a great jab, a combination of jabs and straights, a great jab that closes up, as you can see in slow motion, starts to close up and bruise the eye of Joshua Franco. Why are we watching this instant replay constantly? It was a half an hour of it. Before they did this thing, I was thinking no headbutt, but that's fair play. You should use these instant replays. We need to see. Sometimes we're wrong. They did this. They ran on with this way too long. And I'm thinking, geez, I'm gonna lose my shit if they take all this time. This is so annoying. And then they literally do a boxing thing where they go, well, we're still gonna go with the initial call. And sure enough, you take the good with the bad in boxing. This is classic boxing. They go, oh, it was a headbutt because that was and then it's ruled, a no contest, a no decision. The fight where Andrew Maloney was dominating. Now they're gonna do a rematch of this, and this will be the 3rd time. And, credit to Joshua Franco. He beat Andrew Maloney clean, nice and fair the first time. But Andrew Maloney, this was a bullshit call. But not only that, in the second fight, Andrew Maloney absolutely schooling Joshua Franco and looking like a completely different fighter for that second fight that he's trying to avenge. And it was only lasted 2 rounds before this nonsense happened, and then they called off the fight from there. But they were highly dominant, non-negotiably highly dominant rounds from Andrew Maloney. I'm going to go with Andrew Maloney again. Let's get this win that you already should have gotten the last fight, okay? But nonetheless, it's been a lot of time, and Franco beat him in the first fight. So you do never know. This is not a safe bet. These odds are quite close. I'm going to go with Andrew Maloney for that. That he gets this done. That he sets things right this time. Because you have to believe that guys that try so hard and are so dedicated that one day maybe they'll make something happen for them and make life a little bit fair there. Then you have Nico Ali Walsh making his pro debut. Out of those 2 last names, Ali and Walsh, I'll leave it up to you to decide which is the one that holds, a lot of weight and legacy as far as last names go. That is correct. He is the grandson of the great Muhammad Ali. Keep in mind, he's making his pro debut. Now, I've heard the name, but I'm not super familiar with Jordan Weeks. So I'm not gonna talk out a turn here about this because I don't know, but what I'm going to say is very simply, if Jordan Weeks, and I know he's not a world-class fighter, he doesn't need to be. If Jordan Weeks is if Jordan Weeks is any sort of a good enough fighter that always comes to fight, kind of no matter his record, unless it's super, shitty, even if he has some losses on there, but just a decent record, if he always comes to fight, if he's a brawler kind of fighter, and he has some experience under his name, then I'm going to go with it. Muhammad Ali's grandson loses maybe here. We don't know. I'm talking out of turn a little bit because I'm admitting to you, I don't know who Jordan Weeks is. So I'm not going to place a bet on this fight. I'm not doing any of that, but I'm just giving you a pick here because I'm going to entertain the idea that if Jordan Weeks brings any sort of heart and grit and most of all veteran of having quite a few pro fights, because I don't know what his record is, then I'm gonna go with that the curse is real. And when I say the curse is real, what that means is the curse of a legendary fighter, and it's happened time and again, having a son that is dead ends and then gets them into boxing, and man, are they just disappointing, crushing everybody's hopes and dreams. And that has been the case. You got obviously one of the greatest boxers of all time, Julio Cesar Chavez, his son. There's an example. You have, Hector Macho Camacho, his son, all fat. That's another example. There's just nothing there. Even Tommy Morrison, his son, not as impactful as we thought. You got some exceptions for right now. You got Ricky Hatton's kid doing well, and you got Connor Benn, where his father was a good name, doing well. I'm thinking over time, if I can be honest, if I can go out on a limb a bit, I think that Connor Benn might be the real deal. But I loved Ricky Hatton, and I love watching his son fight, and I certainly hope for and wish the best to Ricky Hatton Jr., right? But or his son. I think he's got a different first name there. But either way, I think there's a chance that even the Hatton kid gets exposed at some point. And maybe not Ben, but that's possible too. There is a real curse here. Anyways, we won't want to spend too long on that subject. But yeah, so we have all that. And then you have Arnold Barboza. Now, Arnold Barboza coming off a very impressive win to stay undefeated now at 25-0 last year over Saucedo. Now, Saucedo, tragically, has Saucedo just an undefeated fighter as well at the time. They had a war, him and Arnold Barboza, which was incredible. Go watch Barboza versus Saucedo. That was a great fight. Both undefeated guys who wanted it, who were hungry. That was a great matchmaking example in boxing to watch. And Arnold Barboza comes out on top. It was a very close fight, but I do agree with the decision. And lo and behold, afterwards, Saucedo, who's had a great career up to that point, who suffered his first loss there, actually gets diagnosed with internal brain bleeding afterwards in the hospital. And he has since made a full recovery, but he is retired now at a young age from boxing, cannot box anymore. Arnold Barboza is absolutely no joke. That was an incredibly tough fight against Saucedo and really showed us something there. On another great note to cheer things up a bit, him and Saucedo are great friends now, and they talk, quite consistently over the phone and text and things like that, or face to face. And, Saucedo wishes him nothing but best, and Barboza feels bad, but Barboza's proud of the win, as he should be. It's boxing. He did his job and went in there, and when it came time to brawl and have a war, he was happy, more than happy, to oblige. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Arnold Barboza, and by the way, he wins this fight, then we're at 26, This is where, you can't face. Saucedo's a no-joke fighter, great competition, and he has that name under his belt. Now he's fighting Moreno or Moran, and, Moran's tasted some defeats before. I think it will be a very good fight. I'm not thinking that he runs over it's possible, but I'm not necessarily saying he runs over Moran, but he's, this should, if Arnold Barboza's who we think that he could even closely be, this shouldn't be too tough for him. I think the Salcedo fight would have been way more tough. If I could kind of read the future here, I'm thinking this doesn't hold up to that kind of test that he already passed. So we're going with Arnold Barboza over Moran. That wraps up the ESPN Top Rank card, and then the last card. This is save the best for the last here, ladies and gentlemen. Loyal fight fans and fanettes. We're going to talk the one, okay? For me, as far as my taste goes. We're going to talk Showtime Boxing, Guillermo Rigondeaux, right? Versus John Rael Casimero. Casimero's a destroyer. Casimero, as far as I know, is undefeated. Casimero's a hard hitter. Casimero's a good counterer. Casimero's a fantastic boxer. Casimero's favored, but only slightly, to win this fight against a legend, okay, in Guillermo Rigondeaux. Rigondeaux, if you like boxing and you are anyone who's a boxing fan, right, and you understand the concept, hit and don't get hit, being a technician in there, showing skill, look no further than the career of Guillermo Rigondeaux. Now, you'll notice the shirt. Big Lomachenko fan. Let's go, Vasily. Very impressive last fight. But, Vasily Lomachenko's the only one to ever hand Guillermo Rigondeaux a defeat. Now, the fight was not competitive. I've never seen anyone get exposed so much who was undefeated, especially all this stuff as Guillermo Rigondeaux was in that Lomachenko fight. That's part of why Lomachenko's great. A lot of people, don't appreciate, like, especially if you're new to watching boxing. Oh, he lost to Lopez, he made some whatever. Then always make an excuse for who cares? Who cares? Lomachenko's I'm not even going to get into that again right now. He's the most, decorated amateur boxer of all time and one of the highest gold earning Olympians in boxing of all time. He has 400 amateur fights, lost once and avenged it twice. Anyways, he schooled Guillermo Rigondeaux for sure. Definitely exposed him when they fought. But that is Guillermo Rigondeaux's only defeat. Now, in fairness, he broke, as far as Rigondeaux goes, in that fight with Lomachenko, he broke a lot of hearts, including mine, when he quit on the stool in between rounds. That's kind of a no-no in boxing. Now, he was getting dominated, and so I don't hold it so hard against him. These guys are getting in the ring, These guys are at a professional level, nonetheless. That's more than you or I, could ever hope to be. So you can't really pass too much judgment, but it's just notorious that that's kind of a no-no. If anything, you don't complain about a stoppage when, a corner throws in the towel. Unless you're Deontay Wilder, the only guy who cared about him that night, then you fire your trainer, apparently. But, you usually don't do that because they're looking out for you, and that's the trainer's job, because as the fighter, you're not supposed to ever want to quit. That's the mindset. And who's there to save and protect the fighters? The trainer to throw in the towel, or the referee, mainly the referee, to stop the fight. That's the first thing you want. The referee's there to protect the fighter. They need to stop the fight. If they're not doing that, you get a trainer who throws the towel in. It's kind of a no-no to go back in your corner and not have your trainer talking you down, talking you up, wanting you to go, and you simply use a no mas. I think that's where the no Maschenko thing came from. But yeah, he made him quit on the stool. But Guillermo Rigondeaux, this fight, he's a replacement in this fight against Casimero, because originally it was supposed to be an all-Filipino showdown with Casimero taking on the legend Nonito Donaire, the Hall of Famer Nonito Donaire. And Donaire's out of the fight. And I'll be honest, I didn't even know before last week or something that was off, and then her Rigondeaux's, in, and it's like, wow, because Rigondeaux's great. As far as replacements come, it's almost the same to me, honestly. Donaire's a Hall of Famer. I think Rigondeaux should be too. Rigondeaux, beat Nonito Donaire. beat Nonito Donaire in a great fight, but he was very, dominant in that fight. And Nonito Donaire, God bless him, even in the ring right after losing that fight, where Guillermo Rigondeaux was like 17, 18-0 or so. He was just 17-0 undefeated. And when he beat, Nonito Donaire. Yeah, just look it up, man. Just look it up, because I don't have time to go on about appreciating the significance of this. He's Guillermo Rigondeaux. If you know boxing, you like technicians, anyone will appreciate very highly and put him in the highest regards of people as far as a technician, man. Now, unfortunately, you get people who know nothing about fighting, who's saying, especially boxing, to say, oh, that's a boring fighter. Some people saying that he's boring because he's so technical, because he's so great at defense, doesn't get hit, and he'll counter. And because Rigondeaux himself, again, is not a hard hitter, he's a technician, he's leaning into what he's good at, which is what anyone should do. He does that. He's always done it well. And then people complain, and I'm scared a little bit that Rigondeaux will actually try to make a bit of a war with Casimero. Casimero already, pre-fight is in the interviews back and forth and the talking and being, questioned. Casimero's already gotten his translator saying, oh, I don't want the Rigondeaux on a bicycle. I want the Rigondeaux who comes to fight. That's stupid, but he's doing his job too. He's going to try to force Rigondeaux into a fight, and if he does that, for sure Rigondeaux's going to lose. For sure, because then you're not leaning into what you're good at. You're not using the tools that brought you to the dance in the first place, whatever they may be. That's not what you want to do, is go against what works for you. And I hope that Rigondeaux fights like the old Rigondeaux, and is able to just do beautiful boxing and beautiful defense and head movement in there. Then I can totally see Rigondeaux taking this as a dog. Right now, where we stand, Guillermo Rigondeaux's a plus 195 for your money, and Casimero's a minus 245. If I can be honest, like I said, I might not touch this fight as far as gambling goes, right? The odds are very close, and that's for a good reason. But I'm just going to tell you simply that I want Guillermo Rigondeaux for sure to win this fight very much. Now, if I was forced to place a bet, just because he's the underdog, and especially because I usually, do parlays, I wouldn't, do that and ruin my whole. I would probably lean Casimero. He's favored to win, and there is a reason, even by slightly. There is a reason for that. That guy can crack. He can hit very hard. That guy has good enough boxing to it. He's very good at countering. It is kind of going to be really tricky to beat Casimero. But man, if anybody could, and Rigondeaux's not on any sort of an off night, he doesn't need to be even the best he's ever been. If he's just simply still a smart defensive boxer, and he looks like not a shadow of the Guillermo Rigondeaux we all know, he could very easily pull an upset in this fight. This is a good fight. You don't get boxing odds a lot like this too. As we've mentioned time and again here, that they have the heavy favorites. Listen, the Maloney Franco third fight, and because of how the second one, those odds are pretty close because Maloney's favored, but only slightly. Besides that, all these other things are almost a guarantee. Virgil Ortiz gonna beat Mean Machine, but I'm gonna watch it to see Virgil Ortiz, and for Mean Machine to see if maybe he can do something else good. I like a lot of fighters, man, like Derevyanchenko, who we've talked about. Even when they lose, if he can do something, if he can even just hurt Virgil Ortiz, I'd very much appreciate it in a loss, and then lose again, and it'd say hurt Crawford and hurt Ortiz, then he's keeping his name in there, even if as only as a gatekeeper, he's that I appreciate that kind. So I'll watch for that. But let's face it, Virgil Ortiz to win that fight for sure. Arnold Barboza should pretty easily handle this Moran fight and Moran fight, and you know those odds aren't even that extreme. But yeah, this is the one, man. Rigondeaux versus Casimero. Man, you couldn't have gotten a better replacement. But you know what? Now to end this boxing episode, we're gonna get real sad. Okay, we're gonna get super sad right now because we're talking replacements, and as a good segue into the final note of this episode, unfortunately, you know, yet again, the biggest fights in boxing are being, you know, disrupted one way or the other, COVID or injuries. You know, we didn't get the Fury thing. We'll get Canelo, but it might be a little later, and looks like the Plant thing fell through. You know, we'll get the Wilder Fury, but that's way later now. We already lost, you know, Fury Joshua before the Wilder Fury was announced, then lost, you know, and then now Errol Spence is out of the Manny Pacquiao fight. I don't know what to say about my level of disappointment in this, but he suffered a scratched retina. Those can that's pretty bad to impair your vision right there. You're not going to be the same fighter, honestly. And also on top of that, those can very easily, way more easily than a healthy, turn into a torn retina. So I mean, there's no excuse here, there's no conspiracies here, but this is just crushing to me and to boxing, man. You know, that was a fight I was going to go on and on and on and on about. So the good news, I guess, is that you're still going to get to see Manny Pacquiao. And they didn't put him in there with a cab driver, but he was about to fight, you know, a pound for pound Errol Spence, you know, possibly, as far as this guy's concerned, possibly the best welterweight if him and Crawford ever did fight. But that's, we'll keep that a little secret. Don't get mad at me in the comments for that. I've always been a believer in Errol Spence, okay? And yeah, now we're not getting that. We're gonna get a replacement in your Rigondeaux, who again is no cab driver. You know, Rigondeaux, you know, hurt the hell out of Sean Porter. Rigondeaux is I'd favor him over a lot of top fighters too, not under top fighters. I'd favor him over a lot, not over Manny Pacquiao, who on top of it has been training for the hardest fight of his whole career now that he's older and taking on I think the very best, and no matter what you think, unarguably at least the second best welterweight fighting at all anywhere in the world today in Errol Spence Jr. Now we're not getting that. We're gonna get your Rigondeaux. I think, you know, we'll still get into this fight more. We'll get into this fight more. It's supposed to happen on the 21st. So the next episode and after we'll be talking a lot about this fight. But unfortunately, yeah, it was replaced. And even though your Rigondeaux is a great fighter, a great boxer, and who I, without a Pacquiao name, would be excited to watch and will be excited to watch in the future his fights again, this is a disappointment. There is no way to, you know, to say that it's not. Very disappointing. But we'll get into that more. We have a great weekend of boxing coming up here. We have some good picks here for you. You know, there is, as boxing always is, right? There's a lot of heavy favorites on the undercard. You can always parlay those guys with some of the lesser favorites who are still very heavily favored, like a Virgil Ortiz. Put together an 8-10 fight parlay. You're going to get, this is a good weekend for boxing, because you have not one, not two, but all four of the major promotions putting on boxing. So you're getting, you know, 4 A sides. Well, the Rigondeaux fight, like I said, that's very dicey. I really wouldn't touch that. But besides that, you're getting the other 3 A sides in the fight, and then all those promotions undercards worth of favored, you know, heavily favored in a lot of cases, fighters. You parlay those together, especially you put like 2 parlays and just have some of the fights there. You're gonna make money. This is a good weekend for that, for boxing, to get good plus money on what is reasonably, you know, safe bets for parlays, because you got a lot of boxing, you know. I'm also going to put together some for the Bellator and for the PFL, because, you know, unlike the UFC, they really do follow more the boxing motto, where they put together some good fights, but they do build their guys up. You do get minus 600, minus 900 odds between these organizations, which you would never see in the UFC unless like an exception, a Shevchenko fighting, you know, your next door, the girl next door. But yeah, good weekend of boxing, good weekend to make some money on my bookie. And yeah, tell a friend, man. Hit the subscribe button. Let's get back next weekend and do this again. I apologize for the last episode, which I kept because I thought it was great with the beach in the background. And honestly, I got out pretty much all my points that I wanted to say. I was about to finish up, but it did get cut off because I've been having a lot of issues with my phones. With my phone, I'm not that, you know, I'm not very, you know, tech savvy either. Okay, so it's taken me a while, man. I had to like delete a bunch of stuff and make space, and I tried to do this episode earlier and still couldn't. I thought I made enough space, still didn't work. Anyways, the good news is I figured this out. We're here, okay, baby? Boxing. We're gonna see you next week, and the episodes will be as long as I want them to be because we figured this out. We'll still keep them short enough and give you what you want, condensed, but with some good information, as we always do. Until next time, stay loyal, fight fans, okay?